Um, Definitely, there was even a jump scare. I even screamed at one point because I'm a chicken.
The stakes seem to be relatively low. The character is somebody that I just have no clamoring for. I could not care at all whether or not she succeeds.
The MCU is broken.
Nerd Champs.
We are live, and this is Nerdside Champs. It is the live version of our show. We thank you so much for everybody that has made time to go ahead and take a look at our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Maybe you're just watching this on the replay too. We greatly appreciate you being here as well. We are the Nerd Champs. My name is Tim, and we're going to go ahead and recap Agatha All Along today, which is Marvel's new series that just dropped. We're going to be joined by a couple of guests here in a second, my fellow nerd champ, Dan, as well as someone else very, very special that's a surprise. So we will get to them in just a second. Before we do that, let's just kind of recap what we're going to be talking about a little bit. Agatha All Along, a.k.a. Agatha House of Harkness, a.k.a. Agatha Coven of Chaos, a.k.a. Why Disney, why? Okay, we're just going to go ahead and get into it a little bit here. There seems to be a trend amongst a lot of these major franchises, particularly when we're talking about Marvel and Star Wars. There seems to be a trend where they introduce a project where the stakes seem to have been lowered. We're used to very, very high stakes in these projects. We're used to high stakes in Star Wars, high stakes in Marvel. The universes end, that could possibly end. The fate of the universe depends on this one thing. And then when we get a story that's kind of a little lower on the tier, sometimes it's hard to be as invested. Now, those stories can still be good, right? Daredevil saving Hell's Kitchen is not necessarily saving the universe, but it is something that is an important story and means a lot to that particular character in his particular neighborhood. But just because stakes are low doesn't mean that they can't be good. What I have a problem with is generally, if the stakes have been lowered, it has to be a character that we really, really care about. And in Agatha All Along, I think that might be the struggle that we're looking at. The stakes seem to be relatively local. And on top of the stakes being relatively local, we also seem to have kind of a character that nobody really cares about. They could give, they could take, they don't really care. So we're going to get into that a little bit. We do have a couple of you watching. Thank you so much for watching us today. We greatly appreciate that. But we're going to go ahead and get into the chat. Barry Allen is slow. Glad that you're with us today. He says, we got to see Witch Cheeks, which we did. So that is something that we got to see. I was not prepared for that and honestly could have done without it, but it was there for sure. We've got a couple of guests here that we're going to bring in. I'm going to bring in my fellow nerd champ, Dan. You know him. You love him. You've seen him on all my other shows. Dan, thank you so much for being here with us. He's my partner. He's my fellow cohort on this channel. Thank you so much, Dan. And then,
hey, no problem.
We have a surprise guest. Okay. Now I know that anybody that's watching you might think to yourselves, you might think, oh, Dan and Tim, they're just a couple of nerds that keep themselves locked up in a closet somewhere. No, that's not the case. Okay. We're married guys with families. Okay. And I would like to introduce you to one of the Mrs. Nerd Champs. It is Jess. Jess, thank you so much for joining us here. This is Dan's wife, Jess, everybody.
Hey, babe.
Hey.
She is the nerd champ wife that approves of her husband's extracurriculars. So anyway, my wife has relegated me to the garage today, just in case you're curious. So anyway, yeah. But let's go ahead and let's talk about Agatha, guys. I mean, I think that I'll give you my initial reaction, then I want you guys' initial reactions. My initial reaction was I really did like the first episode and how it started with the procedural crime drama. I thought that was actually very good. And my biggest complaint with the series is I would have liked more of that. I would have liked more of what they did with WandaVision, even though we'd already pulled the curtain back and we'd already kind of seen everything. I would have liked a little bit more of the genre mixing and kind of getting a little bit more of that. It kind of seemed like we were kind of in the maybe 2010s procedural crime drama is kind of what they were going for, which had been a little later than the stuff that they had done in WandaVision. I think it was kind of like a nice continuation, and they could have kept it going, I think, with some of that stuff. But I understand why they didn't do it, because like I said, the curtain was already off. We already knew that it wasn't really what the show was going to be. So it was kind of something that was a little different. I did like that. Once that ended, honestly, is when my enjoyment for the series actually kind of started to tank. For a lot of the reasons that I actually mentioned already, the stakes seem to be relatively low. The character is somebody that I just have no clamoring for. I could not care at all whether or not she succeeds in her quest to find the road, and she did, and all. I don't really even care. By the way, we're getting into spoilers. I should mention that for anybody that's watching.
Yeah.
The other thing that I just didn't really care for, there was just a lot of stuff in this series in particular that just kind of stuck with me as why did we need, like, that chant scene. The chant scene went on for way too long. Okay. And so that was just one of those moments where I was just kind of like, I understand what they're trying to do. You could have wrapped it up in about half the time, probably. Not really necessary for me, but yeah, let's go ahead and talk. Let's see what you guys think. Jess, why don't we hear your reaction first? What was your reaction to this masterpiece that you saw?
So I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun show to watch. I felt the suspensefulness of it. Definitely, there was even a jump scare. I even screamed at one point because I'm a chicken. I noticed the music, like you really felt the music and it really played along with the show. I know it definitely had me at the edge of the seat, had me questioning like what's going on, what's happening, is this real? This can't be real. And then it starts to unfold that it's not real. I did enjoy all of the characters. I always call her Kitty, Mrs. Hart. I thought she was hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah. She played the part, and
she plays the same character in every show she's ever been in. So
yeah. Kitty
But it's
Foreman.
a wonderful character.
Yeah. So I thought that was good. It was just a good blend of different backgrounds coming together. So I enjoyed. I don't get too deep in the stuff. I'm just looking for something entertaining, good. And I know at one point, Dan and I were talking about it. What's it called again, Dan? The opening?
The cold open.
The cold open, yeah. So the episode 1 ended and it went right into the credits. And for a minute, I was like, wait, is this, like, it can't be over. We're not done yet, right? That's how fast I felt the first episode kind of went.
Yeah,
well,
she thought that was
because
just
you're used to watching hour-and-a-half episodes of Rings of Power. That's what that is. So
This is true.
anyway. All right, Dan, go ahead. Give us your reaction, Dan.
Okay. Playing off what you talked about, I love the first episode. I was getting very True Detective vibes, is what I was feeling. Woody and Matthew, that kind of thing. And I feel like that episode may be a holdover from an earlier version of this show that probably spent 3 or 4 episodes. And where WandaVision went through the history of sitcoms, this one could have went through the history of dramas. And they could have even worked backwards. You could have started at True Detective and worked all the way back to Dragnet. And I would have definitely enjoyed that. But the one episode of it that we really got I thought was great. Overall, I got 2 complaints that are structural and they're just kind of weird, but what, the studio's in charge and they should do these things. First of all, no recap. No, like, get you up to speed. WandaVision was 3 years ago. 3 years ago. And I watched it. I loved it. I think it's probably the best show that Marvel has done. Had the best reason to be on TV. And Jess was asking me, like, what was happening at the end of that? And I didn't remember That was I knew that Agatha had her powers taken, but I didn't know. I couldn't remember if she was trapped in a spell or had her memories taken or like, a little bit of a recap. Like maybe, because one thing I don't like is watching a show and I don't know if something's supposed to be a mystery or if I just don't remember the things I'm supposed to know. You know what I'm saying?
We even paused the show and backed out and was like, maybe there is something out here. Is there
like
some kind of like, hey, preview? There's not.
Yeah. So that was a problem. And then I just got spoiled just like a few days ago watching Rings of Power. And I think everybody needs to start doing this. All of these shows are in the can before they air a second of it. The whole series is completed. At the end of the episode, instead of 8 minutes of credits for like all the different language captioning and all whatever, give me 30 seconds of next week on Agatha All Along. Give me 30 seconds. And it doesn't even have to be like an honest preview. What's just like a couple of little scattered seconds of something for me to look forward to. Keep me baited for next week. First episode in the series in general, for me, this is not the fault of this show. Having Wanda at the end is just a reminder that they dropped a whole temple on Wanda and turned her into a mustache twirling villain in Doctor Strange. And I think that problem kind of leads to what you were talking about, Tim, and a lot of your problems with the show. And I had it written here that I wanted to talk about it. And I think the reason why I can watch this and maybe it bothers you more, and we both know this. I think we're just in different stages of grief about it. The MCU is broken. It's totally broken. It's shattered. Yeah. It doesn't work. It's broken. It doesn't. So whenever they come out with something, it's not like it used to be. You can't look at it in the larger context of this whole world and continuity. As a matter of fact, whenever they do come out with something good now, it's the continuity and the larger context that brings it down.
Yeah.
Like this show is very good. It's very fun. But remembering that they dropped a temple on Wanda is not so fun. Because basically, WandaVision was the last MCU product that I got to watch. I mean, others went longer. Others were done sooner. Without reservation, without like, but man, this is not, you know what I'm saying? When WandaVision came out, I was still feeling very good about everything Marvel was doing. And it was, but then immediately after WandaVision, or shortly after WandaVision, is when we got Multiverse of Madness. And that's when you started having to take things individually, because I like WandaVision. I like Multiverse of Madness. The two of them together don't work.
It never was going to.
It just don't work.
I feel like that's Multiverse of Madness. I enjoyed, but I enjoyed it as its own thing. I really didn't enjoy it as a continuation of WandaVision. And one of my biggest things with this show is exactly what you mentioned, Dan. That I feel like the first with WandaVision, it was one of those shows where they released the first two episodes together, and I'll never forget how hard the hook was at the end of the second episode. If they hadn't released the first two episodes together, a lot of people would have abandoned the show. Okay. Yeah. But because they released the first two episodes together, they had that hard hook at the very, very end. They had the guy in the beekeeper outfit and the helicopter, and she said no, and the whole thing went backwards. And that was when we all got a glimpse of what was going on. This isn't real. This is something that Wanda's creating. We all had that in our mind right away, and we're like, oh no. And then it went right to credits, like right away, right? Yeah. So this one released two episodes, and I don't feel like it had anywhere near the hook. And that's my biggest complaint is that there feels to be no hook, and I just don't know that a lot of people are going to stick with it. Honestly, I looked at the Rotten Tomato scores today, and they actually were pretty good. But I think the reason they're pretty good is because a lot of Marvel people are they're just not watching this show. I was on one of my Marvel Facebook pages, and they asked a poll. They said, how many people are watching Agatha All Along? And I responded yes, and then I commented, because I'm doing this show, and nobody else was going to be watching. At least they weren't openly admitting that they were going to be watching. So that's one of those things. I think, a lot of the people that are watching it are the people that maybe, I don't want to call them casuals, but maybe a lot of people that might not be as hardcore into the MCU and just kind of want to watch a entertaining Halloween type thing. But that's just not me. So anyway.
Well, you talk about uncasuals and people deeply versed in the MCU. If you look at the comments, we got our buddy Jonathan in here.
Oh man, hold on. I'm gonna go ahead and bring.
And he's letting
right
you know.
Here. Jonathan may like something. Everybody, the sarcastic gasp of surprise. Oh no, right? Jonathan may like something. The first episode, mildly intriguing. Second episode, they had me after the song, and I can't believe I'm saying that. I can, Jonathan. That's the least surprising thing I've seen today. Okay.
The song was good, Tim. The song was good. You think witches? I connect witches and songs, witches and chanting. That's like a Stevie Nicks kind of thing.
Way too long, man. It was way too long. So
it was intercut with the arrival of the Salem 7, and I think the Salem 7 that's where the jump scares were. That's
when I screamed.
That mellow, semi-creepy singing, intercut with teen upstairs, made
teen
for
unibrow, teen unibrow, right?
Yeah.
Jonathan also says that it's no WandaVision. I'd just like to point that out. He is aware that it's not as good as WandaVision, so I've got to give him some props, right?
To me, WandaVision is a very high bar. WandaVision wasn't just a great show. It was a moment of time. Yeah. Because for one thing, the MCU was not shattered like it is now. Messing up WandaVision is where it started. I mean, it started to crack actually with Infinity War and Endgame, but it shattered right after WandaVision, and we all felt like this was going to keep going forever, and everything was great. So there was that going for it. Plus, we were all trapped in our houses and couldn't go anywhere or do anything when it was released. And it was a feel-good, nostalgic, isn't watching TV with someone the moral of the story for like the first 3 or 4 episodes is like, isn't watching television with people you love just amazing? Yeah. And everybody was stuck watching TV with people that they love. So it was just like, I don't know. It was synergy.
Jess, I think I interrupted you. I'm sorry. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You had.
Oh, no, you're good. I was just feeding back on, like, again, the music.
Yeah.
With them doing the song and then the creepy sounds. And I just think they really played on each other and was really tugging at all of your senses and kind of keeping you on edge on what is happening. And it kept switching back and forth. And so I enjoyed that part.
I mean, and I openly, here's the thing. I'm well aware that we're coming up on Halloween. Okay. And witch stuff seems to be popular year round now, right? I mean, they're throwing it in Star Wars. They're throwing Wheel of Time on Amazon. They're throwing a lot of witch stuff out there on Rings of Power and stuff like that, right? So witch stuff is popular right now, right? It's in Star Wars, it's in Marvel, it's in all kinds of stuff. And I understand why, especially this time of year. I understand why. I guess it just doesn't appeal to me. And this particular show, it does feel like another one of these Disney projects that just kind of was relegated to a lot of soundstage, a lot of kind of continuity issues where you wonder if the rewrites kind of were, I know that you mentioned that before. It's almost like that first episode was like a callback to a rewrite. You know what I mean? Like that's what it was. It was like, oh, well, we can just throw that in there, So I don't know. There's a lot of that I've just kind of wondered about with this show. I also just think what's really weird is that they're just, Marvel seems to have this issue where they're not really focusing on the characters that people want to see. It's more like the characters that they've got contracts with the actors or actresses. And it feels to me like this was almost something that was promised to Katherine Hahn when she signed on to be Agatha in WandaVision, was you'll get your own project. And this is the completion of that. That's great, but I just don't really care about an Agatha show. You know what I mean? And what, for me, I always look at is it good for the greater MCU? You know what I mean? I just don't see how this is going to have, and it's early, you know, I'm willing to acknowledge it's early. It might have a bigger effect on the MCU, but right now it seems very local, and I just don't get that. But
I don't.
Our friend Jonathan piping in here again. He says, I actually hated a lot of things about the first episode, and the action sequences we have had so far are not even remotely impressive. I almost cut episode 2 off midway, but that song, those sirens were just singing to you, Odysseus. That's what was happening, right? And then he also said here, just carrying on, something about it, the delivery from the actresses and the random neighbor that's along for the ride has me optimistic. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about some of these side characters that we got a chance to meet. I know that we mentioned Teen, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's officially a witch familiar, I guess, is what they introduced him as. So,
Well, I think did she just call him that? I don't know that he really was.
According to Wikipedia, they list him as a familiar. Okay. And there's some other things about him that are apparently going to come to light later on, but we're not going to get into that right now. But he's a familiar for witches. So I guess that she has kind of taken him on as her familiar. And then, what did you guys think about Teen just in general?
I think Teen aspires to be a warlock or a witch, or like I wouldn't, but I do think it's intriguing the spell that he's under, and he seems to be totally unaware that Agatha can't hear him when he says his name or gives his life story. He's totally unaware that that's happening.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that's specific to Agatha, because he hasn't tried to introduce himself to anyone else. So can no one hear his name, or can just Agatha not hear his name and backstory? So that's intriguing, I think. It's set in 2024, and you have a teenager interested in witches. So he's exactly the teenager you would expect to be interested in witches. I mean, he looks like he got dressed at Hot Topic. I mean, that's exactly. I mean, if he looked or acted differently, it wouldn't be set now. It would be set in some other era. Well, I mean, what did you think, babe?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think so far he's played the role spot on.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the first half of that second episode. The first half of that second episode was kind of like the Ocean's 11. It's just like I'm assembling my team, right? And going around, she's got to get different versions of each witch. Right? She's got to have a potion one. She's got to have a protector. She's got to have, right? So let's talk about that team that she assembled. What's really interesting, it seemed like there was, she obviously has a reputation, and there's only a select number of witches that would ever even consider being in her coven is apparently the thing that I took from it. So she goes and she sees the fortune teller. The fortune teller gives her which, by the way I recognized the fortune teller was she was on an episode of Frasier a long time ago. That's the only way that I recognized her. That played his Greek aunt, okay, in one of those episodes. So that's the only reason I recognized her. But it was a great, I felt like that was kind of an introduction to this is how you're going to find your team. What I thought was very interesting was I really did not think that these people would be someone that you would typically go after to help you accomplish a goal like she's trying to. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And she admits that. She says they were the rejects and they were whatever, but it did feel a little almost forced in some areas there.
Well, I feel like they did a good job establishing that she has a really bad reputation and a short time frame. I mean, the biggest thing in drama or fiction is the ticking clock.
Yeah.
To get drama moving forward, you always have to have a ticking clock. You establish the ticking clock, and that makes things roll. So you have the big fight with Aubrey Plaza. What's her name? Rio. I don't know if it even got established in the show, but I looked it up. So, and she says the Salem 7 will be here tonight. What midnight? I don't know. It's that sounds creepier, but yeah, the Salem 7 will be here tonight. You better be ready. So you can't be choosy. You got to slap your coven together and get going. Like, and she wasn't even going to do it. She was just going to run away.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, buy a team. You own the house now. Tell the revenge seekers, you know, I send my best.
I wish I could explain why. Okay. I have no idea why. Maybe it's because she was like trying to be funny and I didn't think she was very funny, but I thought that the potions girl was one of the most annoying characters in the entire show. I don't know why. Okay. And it has nothing to do with me being like anti-woman or any of that. That's not it at all. But there was something about her that was just like, I was just like, I don't know why. I just don't like that character. I have no idea. But so that was one. But then I know that you mentioned before what was Rio, I think was her name, right? And she was definitely she was one of the few characters that bled over from the procedural crime drama over to real life. And I thought that she did a good job in both those roles acting. I think that she did a really good job in both those roles acting. So that's one thing I did want to say. But as far as it goes, so she's going to be officially like the warrior of the coven. Okay, so that was kind of the introduction there. She's going to be the warrior of the coven, and then there's going to be a protector, and then there's going to be a potions, and then there's going to be, and I have no idea why Deborah Jo Rupp is there. They needed a heart or something like that.
And her name's Mrs. Hart.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And she thinks Wanda put her there, right? Or something like that.
Here's the thing. Aubrey Plaza, Rio, she said, Agatha says, you don't even have a heart. And she goes, I do. It's black. And then when they're going through the list, that's why, I mean, Agatha didn't want them to even finish the list. She was, you know, it's like, who's on the list? She said she ate it so nobody could see. And then they asked, what's her name? Lila, you know, we need our green witch. And they said, who was it? She goes, it wasn't even a name. It was a black heart.
Yeah.
So she's like, I know who it is. And she runs and grabs, and I have already forgotten, but she grabs Kitty.
Her name's Mrs. Hart.
Come on. And she goes, my name's not really even Mrs. Hart. That's what Wanda made me be. You know, that was the name she gave me. But that was her excuse to not get Rio to. So, and Rio's not with them. So I don't know how their success is going to go. I mean, they're going to have to reunite at some point. She tried to cut.
That's the idea. I think they're going to have to reunite because the idea on the road was you needed each one of these people to succeed, right? It's kind of the idea. So not only to find the road, but once you get there. So because she's in search of her power, essentially, right? That's what we're trying to do on the road.
I did like I liked the reveal that Agatha never even thought they were going to open the door to the road. And she was hoping to make one of them so angry.
Yeah.
That they would zap her and she could steal their power. That was her real plan. This is what they're actually doing is not her real plan. Yeah. So I thought that was
exactly.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed in the road when we got there. I'll say it. I almost could see the four corners of the room for the soundstage. Okay. It was one of those. I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, and I didn't expect it to be spectacular because let's just face it. I don't think the budget for this was outrageous. Okay. But I do feel like they could have, I mean, go out to the woods, man. You know what I mean? Like, is there no woods in California that you all can just meet at and walk through for a little bit? I guess that's probably one of my big complaints with Disney right now. And it's not just this project. It's a lot of Disney's projects lately. It seems like they're doing a lot of soundstage, a lot of green screen, and a lot of areas
volume,
where they're on location, but they're not.
They got to use the volume. They spent all that money to build it. But the road to me is very fantastical when they got there. And I felt like the lack of realism just played into the tone of what it is. It's not a real place. It's not a real thing. it kind of feels period. It feels like Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
like the yellow brick road doesn't look like a real road, and when they're prancing off to a matte painting, it looks like it, but it looks good too, so I mean, they did do location the first episode, and it probably didn't cost money because it looked like every other crime show,
procedural crime drama. Yeah, just go out
Right.
to the parking lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they shoot all those, like the X-Files and stuff. It was always in Vancouver, so you go out to the woods and it's cheap there, and there's trees, and I mean, it like, and the crime scene and everything at the very beginning, that looked good. At least they were outside. That was that instead of walking with big bright lights and plastic plants. But if it's all plastic plants on the road, I can go with it because it's fantastical. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, and I see that, but I feel like Disney should be able to do better. That's just I feel like Disney, I feel like Marvel, I feel like a lot of them, I feel like they should do a little better. All right, let me go ahead and throw this comment up for John real quick. Our good friend John, if that was really Agatha's plan, then it was really dumb for her to reveal the secret to one of the witches that she needed to be blasted to absorb the power. Okay, and that is correct. I agree with that. It was kind of a silly idea. But once again, Dan and I had this conversation about Rings of Power and about a couple other things where things that conveniently move the plot forward, sometimes that's just part of shows. Okay. And that kind of is one of those instances here. I think the problem with shows like The Acolyte is it seemed like that was all that was happening. It was just like, if only we had this thing that would open a door, and then there's a thing that would open the door. You know what I mean? It was just all kinds of things that would conveniently move the plot forward generally happened in that show. In this show, I haven't seen a lot of that, but yeah, there is a little bit of that. And that's in all these shows, you're going to get some of that. So, yeah, I totally understand what John's getting at there for sure.
I do want to say for Catherine Hahn and Aubrey Plaza, two actresses that I have enjoyed in all kinds of things, but have only ever, Aubrey I've seen in one other thing, but most of the time these are comedic actresses. They're usually funny and only funny. So I think they both did a good job being serious, at least at points in this show.
When she showed her cheeks to us, right? That was the only
See, that's the thing. There's a difference between what would you call it? Tantalizing or sexual nudity and comedy nudity.
Oh yeah, totally.
And butts are always funny. People like bare butts. That's comedy gold. The hospitals with the gown open, people walking down the street with their butt out.
The very end of Patch Adams, man. He graduates and he bends over, it's right there. So yeah, everybody remembers that. So yeah.
Butts are always funny. Butts are funny. So that didn't bother me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you were watching it with the kids, but even if you were watching with the kids will laugh at butts because butts are funny. It's not.
John, and once again, the power of many. The power of many is what pulled him in. John, you are fired. All right. Man. Oh, yeah. He's even mentioning Arnold's
butt was funny.
Right. So there you go.
I mean,
Arnold's Terminator.
I mean, if there was ever going to be a butt that wasn't funny, that was just like intimidating, and scary. I mean, because I can't imagine the butt could be more chiseled or intimidating. It was still just funny. Oh, look at this butt.
Robots got to do squats too, man. All right. So anyway. All right. So moving on from the butt discussion, we're gonna get in here. So let's talk about what we've got as some predictions moving forward. I know that this show has kind of given us a general direction, right? So Agatha is going to attempt to find her power. She's got these people helping her, and ultimately she's on the road that she needs to in order to make that happen. I mean, what are you guys' predictions moving forward here? We've got 6 more weeks of this. So because I believe the last week they also have 2 episodes. So yeah, I think we got 6 more weeks of this. When
does that wrap it up?
Yeah, I think it's October 30th, right before Halloween, if I'm not mistaken.
Can I just say that's like they've learned something?
Yeah.
Because last year, Jess, what were we watching last year?
Goosebumps.
Yeah, we were watching Goosebumps, and it was airing in September and October, and right around Halloween time, they dropped like the second to last episode, or maybe there was 2 more episodes after that, and it felt like a conclusion. And then we just totally forgot to watch the rest of it until a week or 2 ago. We were like, oh, wait, we still got because Halloween was over, the spooky season was done. It was on to Christmas time, and to take a show like this and go past Halloween, that would be death. No one would watch.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go past Halloween, and especially because I mean, let's just face it. What was this? What was this show dropped for? This show was dropped because there really is there's not a ton of characters in the MCU that you can kind of work into a Halloween-esque story. They were kind of going for something that I think was kind of along the lines of like a Charmed and Supernatural combined with maybe a little bit of like Hocus Pocus kind of thrown in there. So it's a little bit different crowd than you would typically pull in for Marvel project anyway, which is why it's more of its own thing, I think, than it is a Marvel thing. And I have no problem with that, because at some point, if somebody wants to just not watch this and still continue the MCU, they can probably do that, at least at this point in the show. But what I feel like that's kind of the reason that they had done this, is because they wanted to bring in a little bit of that almost Halloween special audience. You know what I mean? The people that would typically have watched a little bit of the Halloween special. But I don't know. I mean, they've done the Christmas special show with the Guardians of the Galaxy special and with Hawkeye, and I think both of those went over relatively well as far as holiday specials go. And then they did do the Halloween special. Was it last year with Werewolf by Night? Was that last year?
Yeah,
or
it followed up Moon Knight. Yeah,
I think Werewolf by Night, I liked it, but they went a little too far afield. I think they lost more people than they wanted to. It was black and white. It didn't tie in like to anything.
No,
it still,
and it really is a shame, because not only Werewolf by Night but also Man-Thing are both great characters that I think could bleed in with the MCU really well. They haven't done anything with that, and that's kind of probably the only glaring problem that I have with WandaVision. The only glaring problem I have with WandaVision is White Vision. It's the only one. Okay, and this show is almost the only place where it makes sense for us to see White Vision, but I don't see, with the groundwork being laid, how we're ever going to see White Vision in this show. I just don't understand.
White Vision is going to get his own show in like a year, 2 more years.
They did introduce and say that White Vision was going to come back. They introduced that for sure.
He's going to get his own show.
You can't do a like a cold entry. You can't just be like, boom, here's White Vision. You know what I mean?
They're not going to give us a recap, Tim. They're not going to give us a recap. The White Vision.
This is Disney. They don't do that. What are we talking about?
He's going to be walking into wherever it was that he flew off to in the middle of that fight, and we're all supposed to just remember. Of course, I do remember, because I'm still mad. I'm like,
I think a lot of people, when they made the announcement that he was definitely coming back and that it was going to be relatively soon, I think a lot of people might have assumed that maybe this would make a lot of sense for us to see him here. But I don't see, with the story that's been laid out, how that would make any sense at all. I just don't think it would make any sense. So, anyway,
like, I don't know. I'm enjoying this story, and a lot of other things. Any attempts they make to tie it in are just going to be to the detriment of this story. You're going to have to enjoy it as its own thing. When you try to tie the stuff in,
I would prefer it that way, actually. I would prefer that it didn't tie into the MCU. If anything changes that makes the stakes relatively high for the MCU, what that does is that makes this story more important to the MCU. And I just don't want that. I don't want this story to be incredibly important to the MCU. I want it to be something that you could take or leave, because the things that are important to the MCU are things that honestly I have to be invested in and have to watch. So
I'm gonna lose you and Jonathan on this one, Tim. There are no important stories to the MCU anymore.
well, give us hope here, Dan. Okay, we're clinging that after Secret Wars, things will be all compacted.
You're in
the wonderful
denial.
universe that we know and love, right?
That's why you're angry about that. You're in denial, Tim. I'm over here in acceptance. I'm in acceptance. I'm just enjoying the little pieces that I could gather and find enjoyment in. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't bug me that that the tones, there's a bunch of things that went wrong. Marvel had a great continuity going. They had, and they weren't contradicting themselves. Things were all making sense. And it ran that way all the way up to Infinity War. And it was all going great. There were cracks made in Infinity War because you had just came off of Ragnarok. You had made a lot of emotional growth for Loki in Ragnarok. Thor had been through the Thrasher in Ragnarok, and you only had like half of the Asgardians left. And nobody minded at the time, and I still don't really, and people get mad about Love and Thunder, and people also get mad about Endgame. But the seeds of Thor's character being destroyed was right there at the beginning of Infinity War.
Yeah.
When Loki got fridged, just to show you how powerful that Thanos is. Yeah. And I know Thor was great in Infinity War. He was the most powerful character, the biggest threat to Thanos. But they did that by fridging Loki, which you had just gotten all this development from, and an indeterminate number of Asgardians. I couldn't tell if any of them survived. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until Love and Thunder that we realized that some of them actually made it to Earth. Mm-hmm. And that just kind of, what was done to Thor there is the same thing that they did to Wanda. Wanda had all this development in WandaVision. And yeah, maybe people say it. She was the bad guy in WandaVision. Okay. But she had a crisis of conscience at the end. She had an epiphany. She was going to try doing better going forward. And then immediately next time you see her, mustache twirling villain, temple dropped on her head. Mm-hmm. And it just all started. And then the other thing is Marvel had this great continuity going, but part of that was they were really controlling it quite a bit. And they had a consistency of tone also that was being forced. And everybody started criticizing for them. Right? They were like, "It's just processed meat. It's all the same. It's so bland. It's not different." Well, then they started swinging for differences. You get the Eternals, you get Miss Marvel,
That's the big problem. Like when I think of Marvel, I don't think of the projects that we're getting now. I don't think of Shang-Chi. I don't think of She-Hulk. I don't think of Ms. Marvel. I don't think of Agatha. I don't think of these projects. These aren't what I would focus on if I was Disney. And I understand why Disney is doing it. Because I feel like they kind of feel like Guardians of the Galaxy was kind of one of those that was kind of outside the box, and they introduced it and it became this big phenomenon that nobody could have seen coming. But now it feels like they're trying to do that too much. They're trying to make everything the next Guardian, and it's just not landing. At least that's the way it feels.
I feel like they only have a few interesting threads left to pull on, and they're doing that. Just getting what's left, wrapping up things. Oh, hey, we can explore a little bit of that. But if you're ever going to get back to what like what it was, you're going to need a reboot. You don't have enough popular characters left to get back to that status.
No. So, Jess, what do you think is going to happen in this show moving forward?
I don't know.
No idea.
No idea.
No guesses at all.
They certainly are. They going to stay on this road for all remaining 6 episodes?
That's kind of what I'm wondering. You know what I
mean?
mean?
Is something going to happen and then they're going to lead off of this road and have to find their way back?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? She looked up and there was nothing but concrete there. Like it's not like a door like it was before.
Can they
And
open? Can
and
they
then
Can they get out another way, or do they have to only way out is at the end?
yeah,
And
well,
you
I
make
think
it or
that
it's death.
they can write the chant. Well, I would think the chant,
Like,
right, would do the
can
same
they
Well,
thing.
do? Yeah.
I mean,
Can they
I
do
would
that
think,
again?
but
no, the
Rio
one
isn't
girl,
there, right?
the
So
girl, the cynic, the girl that doesn't believe, whose mom was the singer and all that.
yeah,
You're talking about Alice, I think is her name, that has the
Yeah,
red and
Alice.
black hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her mother is believed to be lost on the road. So I think if you don't make it to the end,
Well,
you
who
either
else is on the
complete it.
road?
Well, they were saying nobody survives. It's a death trap. And Agatha's like, well, I survived. And they're like, yeah, and we all know how you did that. I think she screwed over her coven to survive the first time.
yeah, that's what it sounds like. So
And I think if you don't, you either make it through or you get stuck there or you die. I think you have to complete it. And I don't know if more than one of them can complete it. I feel like it was intimated that maybe they're all going to have to screw each other over and one of them's going to come out on top. I don't know.
So maybe it's just the trials and tribulations of that.
mhm.
I don't know.
I
Yeah,
feel like
that
each
seems
member,
like that's what a lot of it's going to be, right? Is a lot of stuff is going to happen on this road. And then Dan and I had this discussion before about plots that are kind of video game-esque. I kind of
Yeah.
think that might be what we're looking for. We're looking
Mhm.
at how do you get to the next stage of the road in each episode. That's what it kind of feels like to me. But
Well,
I don't know.
given the number of episodes and the number of witches in the coven,
Yeah.
and the fact that you needed each type of witch
Yeah.
to do the road, I feel like each witch is going to get an episode
That's
Yeah.
right.
I'd
where
like their
she's the one
sacrifice.
who solves
Yeah.
the thing. I think we liked the potion lady because we watched Home Economics.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask Tim. Did you watch Home Economics?
I did not watch
Kid-
Home Economics.
Because like
Now,
we talked about,
I did. I
Kitty
did a little bit
Foreman.
of internet research on her. I did a little bit of internet research on her. I guess she's a comedian. So,
Okay.
But she's
and it
like a
seems like
sarcastic comedian. The role that she's playing in this show is, I felt, was the exact same role that she played in Home Economics. It's her delivery, her tone, the way
Mhm.
she says things. There's not a lot of facial expression to go with it. And she
Yeah.
says things kind of the same way. And it's kind of a sarcastic
Gotcha.
Deadpan.
humor.
Yeah.
Now, this is just kind of another side discussion, real quick. One of my biggest pet peeves in the MCU right now is comedic actors. I hate how they're overwhelming us with comedic actors. Okay. So when I found out that Catherine Hahn was going to get her own standalone 9-episode project, I was like, no, that's ridiculous. So I guess that's kind of another reason why this show is probably not for me, because it is central around a lot of characters that kind of are comedic actors, right? It's not just Catherine Hahn, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of the main thing. Like, Catherine Hahn is a comedic actor, but there's a lot of these in the MCU, right? We got Kat Dennings, we got Owen Wilson, we got
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And I mean, there's just a lot of people where it seems like the reason that they're here is for their quick, quippy humor and not necessarily for their acting chops or for their, superhero body. So
Catherine Hahn is
Paul
impressed.
Rudd, that's another one, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think Catherine Hahn has impressed dramatically so far. I mean, that first episode was very
Mm-hmm.
straight. Like
before WandaVision, the only stuff I was familiar with Catherine Hahn was the Bad Moms stuff.
Oh,
and the
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So
well, Tim, Saturday Night Live.
oh well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm talking
Sweaty
about
Balls?
I'm talking about
I think I might. I mean, Christmas is close enough. I might watch Sweaty Balls when we when we end this.
Good night, everybody. Okay. But that's probably one of the reasons that this show is not anything that I'm super excited about, because the comedy actors, I just kind of always have that in the back of my mind whenever I'm watching them. Everything seems like a quick joke. You know what I mean? Just like you said, when she come out naked and then all of a sudden she turns around and there's her cheeks. It's just like, oh my goodness, this is what you get when you get a comedy actor. You get stuff like that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of one of the reasons that it's always going to be in the back of my brain that way.
Which, I mean, Marvel, when people were cutting it down, even before they went with comedy actors, it was known for quippy characters that were witty and funny.
Mm-hmm.
That was like it was the Iron Man template. Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man is very funny.
Mm-hmm.
He's always making wisecracks, cracking jokes. Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch had the same mold. Star-Lord, they're all very quippy and very funny.
Paul Rudd, a lot of them. That's kind of the mold that I think that people went off of after they had success with Robert Downey Jr. is if we can find a way to make this funny and not just super serious, right? Not just Christopher Reeve Superman, right? Make it so that they actually can deliver these one-liners that maybe we hadn't thought of, or maybe that they come up off the cuff or whatever. That's a good thing for the MCU overall. I guess my biggest problem with it is, when I'm taking a look at some of the characters that just are nails on a chalkboard for me, it's people like Kat Dennings in the MCU. It's people like Owen Wilson. It's the people where it just kind of seems like it's almost just too much with the character. So that's a personal preference.
That was all the way back in the first Thor.
Yeah, I know. I didn't like it then either. I didn't like it then either.
She was great in that. Dude, she was one of the best parts of WandaVision.
What's that?
When they were out there. Yeah, her and
she got really smart between that first Thor movie and WandaVision, didn't she? She got really smart.
She was she was a research assistant in Thor. She wasn't dumb. So, what's the other Ray Park, right? That's his name.
Yeah.
No, not Ray Park. Hold on. The guy from Ant-Man that was with Kat Dennings. He's great too.
Oh yeah. You're talking about
Randall Park.
Randall Park.
Yeah,
Randall
Jimmy
Park.
Woo.
Yeah.
Hey, I got the first letter. I got the last name. I was close, man.
You were close.
He's Asian Jim.
I just remember, wasn't he in the movie?
Office fans.
From the office.
The Office Party in the diaper, was that him?
The Office
Was that?
Party. Yeah.
And he had the baby fetish where he wanted to be in the diaper and wanted to be held in suspense. Yeah.
But that's just another example, man. That's another
because
example.
See,
all these
Tim,
people.
I love comedies. Comedies are my favorite. So that's why everything that you kind of hate, I love.
I wouldn't say I hate it. You know what I mean?
That hurts you.
Just that it doesn't. It hurts my feelings. But it just doesn't add to the superhero genre for me. I feel like there's enough comedy that they put in already. They don't need to overwhelm me with it. I saw it when I went to see Blue Beetle. They had George Lopez in there, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is just like browbeating me over the head. But
the internet is learning that Tim has a very narrow spectrum of because on this hand,
I think Jess just enjoys not being the person that you're picking on the most, Dan. That's what Jess enjoys. Okay?
But people would assume with your I hate comedians rant that you're a Snyder bro and you love Man of Steel and you want everybody to be dark and broody. You don't like that either. It can't be too funny and it can't be too serious.
He's Goldilocks.
He's Goldilocks.
Gotta be just right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you guys take over this discussion. I don't know how this happened, but anyway. So next week we're gonna be on the road and we're gonna be hopefully coming across something that will be very interesting. I don't know. I'm like, as of right now, the first 2 episodes for me, they're for the first 2 episodes. I'm not gonna write the series off yet. Okay, that would be silly of me to do. I can tell you that I'm not optimistic based on what I've seen. That stuff that I've seen post the procedural crime drama, right? Anything past that, I'm really, really not seeing a lot of optimism for me liking the show as it comes. But I'm open to my mind being changed. It just kind of depends on what comes on this road when we see it come. So, what do you guys think?
Now, I'm also curious to know whose hair is in that locket.
That's a good point.
What is that?
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah.
So, and where's the locket from? What's its origin? Because she was trying to figure that out and research it. So, what's its story? And does it harness some kind of power? Is it going to help in some way?
In her imaginary reality of the first episode, she had a room that appeared to belong to a dead child or something.
Yeah, a
You know what I'm
kid.
saying? Like
That's what it
this-
looked like.
So what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Like, did she lose a child in her life at some point?
And is it his hair?
Yeah. Like
And
maybe
is
that.
he some kind of,
Yeah.
like her?
Yeah. So that
So there's
could,
a lot of unknown.
Quandary. Tis a
Could go
quandary.
anywhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
So far, I think that's been very well made. It is not the tone that I was expecting. I was expecting something far less serious. I thought they were going to go harder to the somewhat more campy Halloween special tone. But
I kind of gathered from the trailer they weren't going to do that. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, like you were saying, Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus is. I've only ever seen pieces of it. But that's a very campy thing with buck teeth, and crazy costumes, and just overt silliness. You know what I'm saying?
And eating children, and
Yeah.
I think people trying to say this is like Marvel's Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little bit more serious than that.
This is more serious.
I mean,
The core
it
character.
definitely- I know this is a cliche thing to say, but it does have the tone of an early 2000s CW, or at the time it was the WB show. It has the tone of something like that. And that's not necessarily bad. Those shows were very popular, but I wasn't a guy that watched every episode of Charmed. I wasn't a guy that, picked a side on Supernatural. That's not something that I did, but a lot of people did, and they liked those shows in spite of the fact that they weren't huge visual accomplishments. They were very popular. So
the Arrowverse was great for a long time.
yeah, well, and there was some good stuff on there. Don't get me wrong; there was some really good stuff on there.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think
then
the kind of shows that this is more reminiscent of. There are kind of those early 2000s like witchcraft shows. That's kind of what it reminds me of anyway. So yeah, I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens moving on. I mean, I feel like this is we're only 2 episodes in. There's 7 more episodes. We're going to be wrapping up right before Halloween. So maybe they'll give us some kind of a big drop. I don't know, but we'll just have to see. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we've been going on for 58 minutes, so we're probably just going to go ahead and wrap it up. But anything left that you guys want to say before we move on?
No, that was I had backup stuff in case we went short, but we went long, so we'll
right.
save that for another day.
Yep, we'll save it for another day. But definitely, guys, I appreciate you being here, Dan and me, the Nerd Champs. Well, thank you so much for joining us, the Nerd Side Champs, our very first live show. We're excited about it. We never had more than 2 or 3 people watching, but that's okay. We don't need any more than that, guys. Okay. We're going to make it work. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We really want you guys to hear. We want to hear what you think in the comments. Go ahead and leave those as well. But if you haven't told your friends about us, go ahead and do it. We'll see you guys next week. And Dan and I will be wrapping up an episode of Rings of Power here early next week. So until next time, we'll see you on Nerd Champs. Thanks a lot.